I got you some big money. 5 years, 70 million in Cleveland. What was the thought process? Because same division, same conference. What was the thought process to go from Washington to Cleveland, and now you're paired up with LeBron?
Well, there are a number of things that went into it. The financial commitment that Washington initially wanted to make to me, that played a part.
Mm-hmm.
The understanding that we had, not too long before the season was over, we had played Cleveland. I think we were fighting Cleveland for some position, or Cleveland was fighting to get into the playoffs or something of that nature. And I thought about what I could do, to help that team, because I saw where Bron was going. I thought, what could I do to help that team, make it to the next level? So that played a part in it. And then also just enjoying free agency of what it actually was, getting the recruitment trips and things of that nature also played a role, in leaving Washington, because Cleveland sent everybody. I mean, they had conversations with the general manager, the owner. I was introduced to the Cleveland Clinic. My brother was sick, dealing with a heart issue, so that was really important to me. So there were a lot of different factors that went into me leaving Washington. But the main thing is really I wanted to win. I wanted to win a championship, and I thought Bron was a guy that we could start to build. I could play that second role. No one could get any days off, any possessions off, and that was the thought process behind that.
It's interesting because like a year later, you guys face the Wizards in the playoffs, round one, literally and it's a super entertaining series. I remember watching that series, one of the games that you played really well, I think 32 points, something crazy like that, and then Bron hit the game winner with the baseline drive, right? What is the mentality when you're approaching playing your old team? Are you breaking down scouting reports in the locker room? Are you motivated? Is there a certain element of I'm pissed off? Is that in there when you're playing them, or not really?
I didn't leave those guys on a bad note, right? I didn't leave those guys on a bad note. Even the front office, we didn't match up, but it wasn't any sort of animosity. If I didn't have another deal, then I probably would have been pissed off. But I had something that was even greater, right around the corner. So I was okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
So that series was more about the reason why, right? I wanted to win because I wanted that to be the reason why I was no longer there. Without any other issues that were going on, if we won, then that would justify me leaving. If we lost, then leaving would have been a bad idea. And that's kind of how I approached it. Those guys, all the same guys were there mostly. Obviously, they had to bring in a couple guys that replaced me, but they were still running the same system. The same head coach, GA was there. I know GA like the back of my hand, so I know what plays he likes to run. I knew everything, going into that series, and it was just about applying the stuff that I knew in my head to the actual game, and actually executing on it.
They say that basketball is like an open book because you always know what the other team is running, right? In a sense, you can kind of guess and predict what they're running. Is it even easier when you know the opposite team?
Oh yeah, because the nuances. There's a counter.
Right.
You know that there's a play, that first play, but then there's always a counter.
Right.
And if you've been in that locker room, if you've been, in that DNA of that team, that there are a couple counters and which counter is probably going to happen. So it was more of a, you couldn't just use your physical game. You had to think about what the next steps were. Okay, we're going to do this or they're going to do that. So It was more of a, playoff basketball, really using your brain to win a game.
That's awesome. That's really cool. That's an interesting perspective into a locker room, which I think is really cool. So, okay, you're now in Cleveland. And I kind of want to paint this picture because I saw an interview of you, which you said, LeBron today, the LeBron James that we know today is not the LeBron James that you played with. This is third, fourth year LeBron. He's still learning what the league is about, still learning how to win. What can you say about his early stages of his career and how you've personally seen him evolve into what he is now?
Well, he was raw. I mean, he was talented. He was young, but he was raw. He understood the game. He watched a ton of film. So even though you would see him, in a raw state, you knew that he would progress because of the amount of film and the amount of time that he spent watching and understanding the game. And that's really what I picked up the most about Bron, is that he's a student of the game. And I've seen a couple times on the playoff where they highlight, his ability to run a playback or run a series back of the sequences of how things happen. And that's because he's watched a ton of film and he just understands the concept of spacing and where the ball should go, initially.
Right.
So for me, that was something that I picked up early on, that he would have the mental focus. He would have the mental focus to be great.
That's really interesting because now it's such a big factor of his game, like as age has kind of hit him. And I mean, you can't even say it's hit him because he's still playing like a monster, but with age has come the wise part, the wisdom. Well, that's the word I'm looking for. The wisdom of the actual game. I want to go back to a really crazy LeBron performance that everybody talks about. This is in your 2007 run to the finals, Eastern Conference Finals, Game 5. LeBron in Detroit. You guys are struggling a little bit offensively, and especially in the fourth quarter and the overtime. Bron goes for 27 of the last 28 points for the team, right? I think earlier in the season, and this is like early Bron, so a lot of people are still really critical of him. Like, oh, is he that next guy? We don't know if he can live up to the hype. All that stuff is still a conversation that is being had. I think earlier on in the series, there was a point where Bron had the open shot, kicked it to Donyell Marshall, missed the shot for the game winner, right? So there's still that thing about, like, he doesn't have the killer mentality. What is your opinion on the whole killer mentality thing? Like, we know LeBron and Jordan are different, but is that what distinguishes them?
Well, I think that making the right read is a little different than having the killer mentality. Because if you have the killer mentality, then you're going to go and create the angle to shoot the basketball. When you just understand the game, you're going to, you play the game and you're going to make the right play. So there is a difference between, having a killer, mentality or just simply making the right pass. I mean, if you don't have an angle, you make the best pass as opposed to taking the worst shot. So that's kind of how we looked at it. That's what we talked about. That's what we were all comfortable with. And we understood that. But, in that series, it's a little bittersweet because I was hurt. I got injured. I guess it was game 4, maybe. I tore my plantar fascia. So while Bron was even going through that stretch, I couldn't even stand up and cheer. I was in so much pain. I couldn't even stand up and cheer. And they just played that game back probably, a few weeks ago. And I'm like, where am I at? Where? And then I remembered, you couldn't stand up. Somebody had to help me walk off the court even after the game was over. But that game brought back so many memories because that started the video game James. Drew Gooden called LeBron video game James. And from that point on, I think even today, we look at Bron as Bron's going to get the job done. By any means necessary, he's going to get the job done. Whether he's taking the last shot or he's scoring the last bucket, he's in, he can get into video game mode where, he's unstoppable. And that, that pretty much started that, that track with my thought process as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people look at that game as like the game LeBron became king. Like when he decided, this is gonna be me. I'm gonna take over right now because I have to do this, right? And it kind of set the standard for what was to come for the rest of his career. But regardless, you mentioned your injury, which I think plays a huge factor in the next series coming up. Like you guys handled Detroit, it worked out well. Make it to the finals, and that injury is still lingering, right? I think you only play, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you only played 2 games in the finals, right? What was, like, do you feel as if that series goes differently if you were fully healthy and could have guarded a Tony Parker who won the finals MVP or something like that, right?
I do. I do. I don't think that, we get swept. I think the games were close enough that I could have had some sort of impact. with being healthy. And that's just me as a competitor. That's just me, respecting my ability and to go out and to, play on one foot. It wasn't exciting. I mean, I still take, take the accomplishment or take the credit that, I was able to play in the finals, but it wasn't anything normal, right? It wasn't anything normal. I actually had to bow out of the last 2 games because I was just in so much pain, and didn't want to get any more injections, that it was just like, okay, I got to bow out. I got to bow out. I'm sorry to my teammates, but that's, those situations that you come across like that where you can't, impact the game, and it's like these like the finals, so it's like history, like always talk about this. It's a little bit tough, but at the same time, I'm sitting here today, so it's all good.